Hey, what's up guys? It's Kenny Watkins here, the Young Power Sports in Pleasant View, and I'll go over a quick tip and show you guys how to replace the steering bearing race out of your steering head in your motorcycle. So we just talked about in our other video, we just barely pressed the bearing onto the steering stem. We showed the process of pressing this in and getting the bearing on here and the seal on correctly without doing damage to any of the components. The next step, when you come over here and take a look at this, you will see that this bearing race is destroyed. There is no part of that that can still be used. In fact, when you see the bearing and it comes out and it looks like this, then you know for sure it's time to make that replacement. So first thing you're going to need to get these out is a good sharp punch. Now they do have tools. Park Tool makes one that you can slide down in and it grabs it grabs 3 or 4 sides at a time. Not a huge fan of that tool. It tends to round off or break. I like this tool. Snap-on has this, it's a race punch. It's what it's designed for, is punching races. And I just make sure that I keep the edge nice and sharp. If I bang on it and it gets rolled off, then I just put it over on my grinder, then I finish it off on my belt sander and make sure it has a nice sharp edge. But you can see inside here, if you come and look inside the steering head, if you feel right here, there's a lip that sticks out around the edge of the bearing race. It's going to be like that on the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do is slide my race punch down inside the steering head, and I apply some pressure to the punch opposite the side that I'm punching against. So I go ahead and apply some pressure here, and I like this long punch because it gives me something really good to hang on to, and a nice safe place to strike. So we just strike one side, then we'll strike the other. And you can already hear, you can hear the pitch of the hit change, and now you know the race is actually moving. This time it will probably pop right out the bottom. There it goes. We're going to do the same thing to remove the upper race. We're just going to do it the opposite direction. So we're going to put the punch in, and now you can get a good look at what the edge of that punch actually looks like when it's making contact with the race. And again, I just pull pressure against the punch opposite the side that I'm pressing out and give it a tap. That moved real easy. I gave that one tap. Tap number 2, and it pops right out. Okay, there's our old race. We can throw that in the garbage, and I'll show you quickly how to install the new race and not do any damage to it. Okay, cut. Obviously, it's important whenever you're doing a job like this to keep everything clean and neat and laid out so you can keep track of all the components, things don't get lost, and you make sure you do a good job. When you're talking about motorcycles and you're talking about assembling these things, cleanliness is next to godliness. If you want to be perfect, if you want it to be right, you have to keep it clean. Now Luis is going and cleaning those bearing those race lands, and they look great. They're ready for the install. Okay, so the next tool we need to get this installed is the race driving tool. So this is going to install the new race over here into the steering head. And you don't want to use any kind of hard material to pound this in. So this is a race driving tool. It's made of aluminum on the head, so it's much softer than the hardened steel. This is tool steel. It's really hard. The aluminum won't damage it, and it has a shoulder cut on the outside edge. They have them so that you can get it so it's pretty well matched. This is not a perfect match, but this will drive the bearing in, or the race in, without doing any damage to it. The next size up I have of this is too large. It won't quite fit. But as long as they're close, you'll be good. What I like to do is start. This makes sure we get it centered. This makes sure we get it even on both sides. Tapping on this top edge with a hammer like this will not hurt anything. This is a much harder material than the hammer, first of all. Second of all, there's no bearing riding on this top surface, okay? So if you rotate around and just get the bearing started, and now we've got it flush, and we know that our bearing race is square. Now that we have it square, we'll take our driver, place it in, and just give it a couple of good firm hits, and it should drive it right in. That's it. It's seated. And no damage to the component, no damage to the frame. And to install the bottom, we'll do the same process. Now this may be a little trickier just because we have some of the wiring and cables and things in the way. Now this one doesn't allow us to get it started just because of the way that the bearing race sets up inside the steering head. That's okay. We'll just drive it in with the driver right from the beginning. Make sure that we don't get any wires stuck up in there and get them pinched, or cables, or make sure everything is clear and out of the way when you're doing this. And as I say that, it's right in the way. Now you can see that it's a little bit cockeyed. Which means I just need to put a little more pressure on the one side of the driver. Okay, now in this situation, it's slightly cockeyed. It's not going to drive straight in. Don't keep forcing it. Stop. I'm actually glad this happened because this may happen to you. In fact, chances are it will happen to you. Just take your punch, straighten it out. Don't continue to force it. Don't try and force it. If it doesn't straighten right out, if you try and force it, you could damage the steering tube or the steering head. Okay. I think I've got that squared up now. Not quite. And this is kind of the trick. Make sure we haven't damaged anything up there. Feels okay. You can see that that was going in completely sideways. And this is kind of the problem. This is the hard part about trying to install this and not having it squared off from the very beginning. It can be a little tricky. That's why on that top one, I squared that off first. Okay, I think we have it now. Now it should just drive right in. There, we heard it bottom out. So like I say, it's okay if it starts off a little bit cockeyed. Just make sure that you don't force it. Just stop, be conscious about what's going on, square it up, and try again. And that's seated solid. That feels great. That should work just fine. And that is how you install the races for a steering set. So thanks a lot, guys, and keep those wrenches spinning. Think young. We'll see you soon.